Some changes in the field for the presidency of the United States related to the GOP. To talk about it, we have the vice chairman of the Pennsylvania GOP, Joyce Haas, in studio today.
Commonwealth's attorneys and I have concluded that the NCAA sanctions were overreaching and unlawful.
Someone's got to develop a product you and I as a consumer are going to want to buy.
Our country needs a comprehensive energy plan.
Good morning and welcome to this edition of For the Record. Great guest for us this morning. We have Joyce Haas, the vice chairman of the Pennsylvania Grand Ole Party. Mrs. Haas, thank you very much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
It's been an exciting 2 weeks. We'll get to talk about the Pennsylvania primary in just a bit, but let's focus on more recent stuff. The Indiana primary, your thoughts on that?
Rather exciting to watch it all come down last night. I think it happened as was expected. Perhaps Trump even outperformed what was expected, but the polls were showing that's where it would be. I'm kind of glad that it's been a whole lot leading up to this. I think I'm glad to be able to say we do now have one candidate, a presumptive nominee, because we do expect that probably John Kasich will also drop out this evening. And Pennsylvania has been important, and Indiana will certainly be remembered.
Oh, absolutely. Cruz quit saying that he doesn't see a viable path. A lot of people would have said after New York they didn't see a viable path. Bill O'Reilly was big on that the media just kept it going for ratings. My question to Ted Cruz is, you're going up against a man in Trump who had Digger Phelps, Lou Holtz, Bobby Knight, Gene Kading, all kings of Indiana. Short of Ted Cruz coming out with Jimmy Chetwit and Gene Hackman from the movie Hoosiers, who else could he get besides a controversial governor with some of the laws that have been passed out there? Why did it take this long for him to drop out?
Because he believed in himself, I believe. And you don't give up easily when you've put so much of your life into it. So there was the one last hope that he had that he would win Indiana. And there were many people still pulling for him. What did he get, 34%, 35%? And so you don't give up on those people either. They're voters who wanted to be able to vote for him. So he handled it well afterwards, I think, to be able to realize there was no path. He knew he could not reach 1, 2, 3, 7. But after last night, he knew that Trump easily could reach the 1, 2, 3, 7. I think in his mind, he always had hoped somehow Trump would not reach it and that it would be an open convention. And the reality hit him, I think, last night.
The establishment. Obviously, everybody doesn't always go along with the establishment. Some would say that it's an epic failure at how they came out and said we need to stop Trump. What was your thought as you saw all this playing out as somebody very high up in Pennsylvania saying, were you on the stop Trump bandwagon or were you more of a party uniter?
I was never on a stop Trump, never. Instead, I would go out from county to county. In the last 2 months, I really visited and spoke in almost 50, I think it was 50 counties as I was keeping track. And my message was always that we as a party do not choose the candidate, the voters do, that the chairman and I, Chairman Gleason and I, early on from day one said neither he nor I would endorse any candidate, that instead our message is the unity of the party, for each person to go out and work very, very hard for whoever the candidate is, supporting individually, and then whoever wins, the importance is to pull back together, and then that we go out as a party and work for whoever that candidate is. Our party never supported any one particular candidate. It's equality for all, and I've watched that in Reince Priebus. I think that at times you hear what you want to hear. In other words, if you would like to believe that the establishment was behind one candidate or another, I never saw it that way. I think Reince Priebus from day one also was out there saying it is important that we are totally inclusive and that we share all, eventually, because we don't share it during a primary, all of our resources for whoever happens to win that election or who our nominee is. And so once after the convention that we have our nominee, we are 100% behind. Now we have a presumptive nominee at this point. I do not see any track of anyone else being there, because the other thing that Reince Priebus has said again and again and again, and nobody wants to hear it and believe it, it seems, is that absolutely we will not be changing the rules of the convention. And I know that when he spoke, at one point he said we will not change one period, we will not change one comma, we will not change anything. It is not, and it's not unfair, it is not rigged, it is not, there's not a bad thing that the National Republican Party is doing, nor is the state Republican Party doing, that it will be there. And so with those rules in place, there is no track. Now, there was a track until the 1, 2, 3, 7.
Last night, yep.
But basically, that 1, 2, 3, 7 was not going to change. The way the nominations happened would not change. And Reince Priebus has been saying that. People just had to hear it properly in their minds.
But there's been some people, Haglund, who's on the Rules Committee, has said, well, it's not necessarily, you know, we could change the rules. That was somebody on the Rules Committee saying that, not Ryan Priebus. But how much damage do you think that rhetoric has done to the Republican Party?
Only time will tell, because the question is, do we pull everyone back together in order to win? Because our ultimate goal is to the Republicans to defeat the Democrats, for the conservatives to defeat the liberals, the conservatives to defeat the progressives.
It's like Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State,
Absolutely.
Ohio State. That's exactly
Yes.
what it is.
And so I'm pulling for our team 100% right here. And again, when there was always the perception that perhaps someone in the, quote, establishment was leading a charge against or for one candidate or another. Remember, these are super PACs. And the party has nothing, really nothing to do with super PACs. They may not have anything to do with the super PAC.
Well, it's gonna make for an interesting general election, no doubt about it. Stay with us. You are watching WHVL's For the Record. Welcome back to WHVL's For the Record. Joined here by Joyce Haas, the Vice Chairman of the Pennsylvania GOP. Mrs. Haas, we just got done talking about Indiana, some damage that has possibly been done to the GOP. Pennsylvania, we just had our primary a little over 2 weeks ago, maybe let's say 11 days ago. Nice educated guess on that one. The results. There was some controversy because Pennsylvania, obviously it's a closed primary. Independents don't get to go to the polls and vote like in some states. New York also does the same thing as Pennsylvania. Also some questions about delegates, about if people voted for Trump, whether they voted for Cruz, if their district would have won, is that delegate going to each candidate? Can you just explain to us a little bit about how that process went down?
Okay, the delegates, as it has always been, at least for the last 40 years where I've been part of the process, the delegates have always been chosen this way. And people simply did not pay attention because always it was as if Pennsylvania did not matter. Every state chooses how they want their delegates to be elected and how they want them to be voting. Other than there are certain things that are fixed. Every state has 3 delegates that are the chairman, the national committee man, the national committee woman. There are those 3. Every state is apportioned equally on their number of delegates by the number of Congress people they have. In other words, we have 18 times 3, that's our 54. And, excuse me, that's why we have 54. Some have other numbers. But they're all chosen equally by congressional district. The thing that varies is how they're chosen on the ballot. And Pennsylvania does not have the name of the delegate placed after who they are supporting. A couple of reasons for that. It's the sheer fact that when you are out and you are circulating your petitions, because it's a representative democracy, so that, again, just as you elect your legislator, so you elect your delegate. The delegate has to go out and gather X number of signatures, to be placed on the ballot in the first place. They're doing that back in the cold months of January, before even everyone knows what candidates are out there, let alone what candidate they might want to be supporting, and to be able to declare where that would be. In other words, I started off as probably close to a Santorum supporter because he's a good friend, and if I had put Santorum behind my name on the ballot, then I'd have no one to support. I would, well, it's not just that somebody wouldn't sign. It was by the time, within the next couple of elections in different states, he doesn't exist anymore on our ballot. Therefore, am I running as a Santorum delegate, and therefore I am dismissed because my candidate would no longer be on our ballot? Pennsylvania does it that way intentionally, that absolutely everyone who circulates to be able to run for delegate is able to be on the ballot no matter who they would be supporting. Now, it does mean that the voter must search out and know who those delegates are.
That takes me into the next thing. With so much low voter turnout, is it wise, say, and I'm not a big fan of how the Democrats do super delegates as well, and people that watch this program know that I am a registered Republican. Now, I don't know if my vote back in Schuylkill County, how would my person vote, my delegates, because I vote absentee, I check off whoever I did vote for and things like that. The majority of people, and I consider myself pretty informed, the majority of people that are going to the polls, I don't think they know who the delegates are. Is it, in the times of low voter turnout, should we be making it harder for people to be informed on the election issues?
This was a pretty high voter turnout for this particular primary.
It was.
Because the interest was there. And nearly every county, take it as local as possible, each congressional district, there is a way to be able to find out who is supporting the candidate you want to be supporting. Early on, Deb Flavin, who is our executive director here, put together and said, these are the 9 people who will be on, the 9 people who will be on your ballot in the 5th congressional district. This is who each person is supporting.
Yep.
And, or those who have said, I will vote with the 5th congressional district. However the 5th congressional votes, that's where the vote will go. And it was there, and it was there early on. Not only that, the candidates themselves. For instance, Donald Trump had sent out mailings to almost every household to say, in the 5th congressional, these are the 3 people I want you to support who are the Trump delegates. In the 11th, it was, these are the 3 that I would want you to do. So the candidate took that responsibility of saying, these are the people that you should vote for if you are voting for me as president. He
took some flack for that because people took it as him complaining about how the election process worked. I kind of looked at it as he was partially educating voters that actually this is what should be done, and that's how I took it. I think he got some, for how much flack he's taken, some of it warranted. I think that was unwarranted. From your standpoint, just putting on the primary, what does the state GOP, how much are they involved with what goes on the primary day and leading up to it?
Actually, they are not the money people behind it in any way. They are the ones who make certain that if there is any problem at any poll, we have a central number that you call in and say, hey, there's somebody at my poll who is threatening me and I shouldn't be there, or my ballot, I'm not punching it right. That's our responsibility. We have our attorneys across the state working on that. That's our responsibility. We are also responsible for making certain that the ballots are getting there. I mean, the county does that, but we are checking it out ahead of time to be certain that the ballots are going to be there. But what the party does leads up to Election Day more so than on Election Day itself. We may help if someone says our candidate for, let's say that there had been for our U.S. Senate candidate for Toomey, and there was an opposition there, and we do support our incumbents. And so they would say, hey, we need a whole bunch of volunteers to go out, and so we would help to find those volunteers.
Well, it definitely takes a lot of work. One thing I commend the state of Pennsylvania doing is having both parties' primaries on the same day. I feel like that's how it should be. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, it's going to be a hotly contested general election. How is that going to affect Republicans across the state of Pennsylvania? Talking PA politics right here on WHVL's For the Record with Joyce Haas, the vice chairman of the Pennsylvania State Grand Ole Party. Mrs. Haas, you brought up Pat Toomey at the end of the last segment. He is going to be in a contested election with Katie McGinty, somebody who's also appeared on For the Record as well. And from talking to some people in the GOP, when she was actually running for her last post in 2014, there was some talk about she really understands Marcellus Shale. So that's going to be I know it's kind of different in the U.S. Senate, but she's known across the state. How big a fight is this going to be for Pat Toomey?
He will be in a fight for his life, I'm sure, and he's prepared to do that. And that is, again, where part of the party comes in, that we are looking at numbers. And our job will be to make certain that we have the biggest turnout possible. We're down by 1.2 million Democrats to Republicans, plus another million of independents. So we have to be certain that we are turning out our Republican vote and that we help in that manner. But we also need to be certain the message is out there, that we as a party will more so be working from Pat Toomey down. We have the 3 state party candidates who will be out there, and so we will be working for them also for the turnout. If we can turn it out for Pat, that means we are turning it out for Rafferty, Brown, and Voigt, so that we will have it for those also. And then that helps the down-ticket congressional. You'd like to think that it works from the bottom up, because if you get your local vote out, if we're turning out for G.T. Thompson here in the 5th, or for Schuster in the next door, if they are working hard to get the turnout, when they come out to vote for them, they'll be voting up the ticket. So it works both ways, but that's our job, to make certain that we get that turnout there for Pat Toomey. And Pat Toomey knows Marcellus Shale as well as Katie McGinty does, if not better. And that's one of the things that's going to help Donald Trump in Pennsylvania, is the fact that Hillary has already come out against the coal industry, has come out against the gas, any fossil fuel of any type. And so Pennsylvania depends upon that. And that's going to help, and that we will have a turnout for them, and we will win for those reasons.
I'm glad you brought up that you believe Trump will help in Pennsylvania with the Marcellus Shale and the business background and things like that. There are those that believe that Trump is going to hurt the party nationally. I would contend that maybe under the leadership of Senator McConnell out of Kentucky, that the lack of action by the U.S. Senate on multiple issues, not to mention the Supreme Court, that's just one of them, that's actually going to hurt Republicans more across the country, and even possibly, Pat, here in Pennsylvania. I don't know what your thoughts are.
No, my thoughts are the opposite of those. I believe that Donald Trump will help with the turnout because, number one, that Supreme Court, 1, if not 2 or 3, that's going to be affected. And the Supreme Court, we have to maintain the Supreme Court. It's up to us to help get that word out that you must turn out to vote and you must vote Republican. Otherwise, if we lose the Senate, we lose control over the next 3 generations of people because of what can happen on the Supreme Court. And so that will be a focus. And Donald Trump, I think, is a smart man who will realize that, yes, indeed, they're going to be asking him about those Supreme Court nominations. What kind of person would you be choosing? And that, and couple that with the regulations he wants to get rid of that have been made by executive order, he's going to try to say he will do to get rid of those to help our industries in Pennsylvania. I think that instead of saying it's a negative, I think I'm looking at it as a positive that is going to help what's going to happen with Pat Toomey.
Other races across the state, the Attorney General, that's probably going to be another highly contested race in the state of Pennsylvania. That, a lot of people, especially around Penn State, would say has been screwed up for a long, long time, especially what they saw happen at Penn State and obviously court proceedings going on right now. How does the PA GOP, what's going to be their role in possibly getting the vote turnout? I know you said bottom up, but is anything specifically targeted at the Attorney General race?
Well, again, it's not targeted specifically at that one. We ask our 3 candidates who are statewide candidates to work together. And so that they, in their schedule, in trying to be in every single county, every single little precinct that they can get into, if one can't be there, the other one is, and they speak for each other. And they're all three talking turnout. They're all three trying to raise the money that's going to be necessary in order to have everything that they need for the election. They need TV. They need radio. They need news media in whatever form it happens to be. And again, we need to help them, guide them toward where they can find that money. And we don't raise it for them. We expect them to raise it. But we need to give them every bit of help that they can possibly have. We work as a team of three, and really a team of four almost, in saying it's Pat Toomey included in those, because if we can win those elections, we win the whole ticket all the way down through.
Take me into Cleveland. How do you see everything playing out in July in Cleveland?
A lot quieter than it would have been before yesterday.
Quiet.
I have served on the platform committee. I've served on the different committees that do write what happens. And I was looking at it this year thinking, am I sure I really want to serve on one of those this year? And the credentials I expected was going to be absolutely a fight, or I expected the rules to be a fight. And by Donald Trump coming out early now ahead, just not as early as usual, he does. Now, he will be considered the leader of our party. He will be guiding what happens with the convention. And he will have a say in who is speaking, when they're speaking. And so it took a whole lot off of what normally the RNC was going to have to do to be leading the convention. We're in charge of all the arrangements. We are in charge of the process. But now we do have our nominee ahead of time, and he becomes in charge of an awful lot of what else will happen at that convention. So it's better than it was yesterday.
20-second answer, yes or no. Is there going to be a backdoor dealing to a possible third-party run?
No. No, not to my knowledge in any way, shape, or form.
How come? There's still talk about it from people that they still want to try to run a third party possibly because they're not happy.
Well, then what that does is that ensures that we have the Democrats, we have Hillary Clinton then for the next 4 or 8 years. And so there's not going to be any Republican leadership who's coming out and saying we need a third party run. Definitely not. I
think that would definitely be a wise move on the Republican parties. Thank you for watching this edition of WHVL's For the Record.